Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Shootaround. I am the only host of this podcast, Rudy Saint-Claire, and joining me, as is tradition, above me is the legendary AlexHoops and the one and only Jacob Rusty Buckets. Fellas, how are we doing today? Nick, of course, is on vacation.
Good.
Like that.
We're doing good. Is anyone going to? Okay.
This is an audio experience, but I will just put my thumbs up.
So if you're listening at home, be sure to come on over to the Also Rusty Buckets channel on YouTube. Subscribe, turn on notifications so you can join the live stream. This show is brought to you by our chat. Shout out to James Pratt for telling us the time. He says it's 3:30, and we appreciate the 69 of you already in here.
Nice.
We ready to break down some playoffs stuff today, but first, I gotta keep my voice nice and soft so I don't come up on Jacob's mic. We're going to talk a little bit about this MVP campaign that just ended. Nikola Jokic conceded the race. However, he won it anyway. He doesn't want it, but he got it.
Unfortunately, they don't actually take Jokic's vote into account for who wins MVP.
Do we disagree with this pick?
I thought it should have been Luka.
Entirely reasonable. I think it's you couldn't go wrong. That's all.
Right.
I've kind of been a fence-sitter with this MVP race.
Yeah, this is one of the most strong in terms of like having a varied amount of candidates. Usually it's like clearly like one or two guys by the time we get to this point, but there's realistically three guys that this could go to. And that showed in the voting of the top three being Luka, Jokic, and Shea. Tatum and Jalen were also not, bad candidates, nor was Giannis. Sorry, sometimes you got to burp.
That was a gross one. It wasn't even like a subtle, like polite burp. It was just like, hey, y'all want to hear something disgusting?
I did it away from the basket, from the mic. I'm watching too much fucking basketball. What the hell was I talking about? Let's just move on.
I don't know, man. I just got distracted by your burp. That was into that story.
Right. It's one of the most could have gone to anyone races I've ever seen. But we kind of knew it was going to go to Jokic, so none of it was surprising. Definitely very funny timing, though.
That's how it always goes. I don't know why they wait till the second round of the playoffs to announce it. Just do it before the playoffs. Like, oh, the season ends. We're going to announce the awards now. They stretch it out over weeks. And they do it on, like, it's just a social media thing. It's like, oh, congrats. This dude won MVP. Here's a tweet from Shams. Like, can we get a little bit of spectacle, please? A press conference, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, because I'm such a casual. I've sort of lost perspective on this. Ever since the NBA awards show ended, I don't know what to do. Do they still present them at like half court before the games in the middle of the playoffs? Do they just revert back to that fully, or is it just tweets now?
I think they still like present the award, but I think like a lot of teams.
I can remember Jokic hoisting it. Like I remember video of that.
But like with obviously this is not a major award, but like the Kareem Abdul Sportsmanship or Off-Court Award or whatever it is, I forget what it's actually called, but it's like the award that goes to the player who like does a lot of work outside of basketball. And Kat won it this year, and like for that award, there's a video on the Timberwolves YouTube channel where they just give him the award like at practice.
Gotcha. That makes sense. I mean, I feel like there's only really like the awards that show up in 2K. Those are the ones that get presented at the games. Only those ones that end up on the end of season screen. Everything else, just gets.
I don't think they do a presentation for coach or executive of the year
or most improved. I think Ja Morant just got that in the locker room and then handed it off to Desmond Bane and called it a day. Did Ja Morant ruin the most improved player award? We want to blame Tyrese Maxey, but I think it was Ja Morant.
To be honest, I kind of forgot that he even won it because I always forget about most improved player like right after it happens.
You're telling me you don't have every MIP memorized?
No, I don't. I do not.
I just think the criteria for that award shifts all the time.
Right.
It has never been a consistent award. in terms of like how
what bothered me is it always sticks out to me more because I usually agree with him, but JJ Redick was like, Tyrese Maxey, kept the Sixers afloat without Joel Embiid, but no, he didn't. They dropped in the standings significantly. Meanwhile, Kobe White, when DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic were out, and obviously Zach LaVine too, but we've learned that Zach LaVine's kind of more of a negative than anything else. The Bulls' record fucking improved. That's improvement, bitch. JJ.
Oh boy.
Are we still a vehemently anti JJ Redick podcast or not?
No, I've watched just about every piece of basketball content JJ Redick has made. I am fully JJ pilled.
Yeah, without Nick on the stream, we don't have anyone to just vehemently shit all over JJ Redick. Next head coach of the Lakers, by the way. Most likely with Darvin Ham out.
No, there's no shot. There's no shot, dude.
That was the only reason LeBron started that podcast, was to get inside JJ Redick's head and plant the seed. You need to come coach for LA. Fuck this media company. Come take a way harder and worse job.
Okay, I do have something to say.
Uh-oh.
I think just as like analytics boys, like calculator boys, can reduce basketball to strictly like a numbers game, and that's just like totally not how it works.
Yeah.
I think there is an element of that in X's and O's, like that realm of basketball where like, oh, you know what like motion strong is? Like, oh, you figured out basketball. Like, you know everything there is to know. You know what a screen the screener action is? Goodness gracious. Like, here's a head coaching job. Like, just as reducing the game down to numbers does nobody any good, I think reducing the entire game down to just like half court sets also doesn't do anybody any good. And this is not me saying that like JJ Redick does that, but I think a lot of the times when we look at coaching, like it's really easy for anyone who knows a lot about like basketball X's and O's to say like, oh, I could be a head coach. And I'm not saying JJ Redick couldn't be a head coach. This is not me saying that at all. But there's a lot more that goes into coaching other than drawing up plays. There's lineup management. There's personality management. Like, I know we kind of hate to do like that speculative stuff where we're like, oh, he lost the locker room. But like that is a real thing that happens. It's something that a coach has to be able to do, is they have to be able to get the locker room to buy in. There's implementing a scheme, which isn't just like X's and O's as much as it is like knowing what X's and O's will actually work based on your personnel. It's understanding your personnel and their skill sets. So I'm not saying that JJ Redick would be a bad coach. I'm just saying I think people are being very, very reductionist with how they view coaching in the NBA. This isn't just like a thing with JJ Redick potentially being the Lakers coach. He'd probably do a fine job. I'm more so saying like Darvin Ham just got fired, but like I'm still not fully convinced that Darvin Ham is like the like 30th coach in the league in terms of like coaching ability. I think there are bad coaches for good teams right now. And just like there are good coaches on bad teams. Unfortunately, if you're a good coach on a bad team, you usually get fired.
Yeah, it's also worth mentioning, like, just knowing the X's and O's doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to teach them on the actual floor to the players. We've only seen JJ display that he knows what sets are, which is important. I've learned a lot from it. I learned what screen the screener is because I watched JJ Redick. Look at me. But the guy has coached 9-year-olds before. That's it.
This is becoming too JJ Redick centric, this discussion, for my liking.
Yeah.
We're just talking about coaching in general. This is not like an indictment on him. I think everyone listens to his content at this point or watches it.
Yeah, definitely not. It's just like, I think the people who look at JJ, I think it's more people looking at him and immediately thinking he'd be a great coach because he explained a horn set to you.
I do think that
Right,
JJ
yeah.
Redick is enough of an asshole, like talking about the non-X's and O's sides of the game. He's enough of a jerk to be a head coach. It takes a little bit of leadership to push these guys around who are at the top of their class, world-class athletes, you know. And I saw a tweet exchange between JJ Redick and a beat reporter for someone, I don't remember who. He was basically just like unloading some dirt on JJ Redick, a little gripe he had with him, where one time he cold called him kind of in the evening and asked him for an interview, and JJ basically told him to fuck off, to lose his number, and that like he should have gone through the proper channels. It wasn't actually with him, it was with like someone who worked with him at his company or whatever, but he was like, how dare you call me when we have no established relationship? And I'm just like, man, you could have handled that a little bit nicer. You could have been like, hey buddy, next time talk to my agent, please don't call me again, instead of like, lose this number, how dare you? Like, that to me tells me he could be a decent head coach in the NBA.
Interesting.
Biting insight from Rudy Saint-Claire.
So, Alex, no love for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander as a MVP candidate. You think it's perfectly good for Jokic? You said no one can lose between like the top candidates. I just didn't hear you talk about Shai at all. I know you're biased. You're a true fan.
Well,
but you tend to separate yourself a little bit from your fandom when it comes to your analysis, unlike me.
Someone can lose. Everybody but Jokic lost. Someone can definitely lose.
You know what I mean? These are all good options.
If Shai won, I think it would have been well-deserved. If Luka won, it would have been well-deserved. Jokic won, it was well-deserved. It's like someone was going to have to lose. Like two guys were going to have to lose.
For me, I just wish...
however you kind of view the race.
I don't know if it's a fair logic, because obviously you're just supposed to go season by season, but I'm like, the guy has 2 and doesn't want it. Give it to one of the guys who doesn't have one already. It's more interesting to me that way. Whatever. Yeah, it's fine. But I would have liked a different result. It's not a bad MVP by any means. It's very awkward, the timing with what's happening with Minnesota, that's for sure.
Well, I think we've pretty much exhausted our MVP chat. Shout out to Naz Reid for winning Sixth Man of the Year. I think it's time we move on to your Thunder losing to the Mavericks in Game 2 of Round 2 of the Western Conference semifinals. The whole Round 2 bracket has 2 teams that split the series, or 2 series that split the first 2 games, and a 2 where it's a 0-2 and 2-0 respectively. But we're going to kick it off with the Thunder. What happened last night? I did not watch the game because I'm a filthy casual who only tunes in when it really piques my interest. What's the story with this loss? I kind of expected OKC to take it home, especially considering that Luka is hobbled, as far as I've been reading on Twitter.
So what happened is the Mavericks shot, and this is props. I know I'm an OKC fan. I always try to be like as unbiased as possible. I am not like approaching this conversation from like a biased OKC fan perspective. The Mavericks shot 48.6% from 3. That's very, 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 very good.
37 attempts.
Yeah.
So they hit 18 of them, which was 8 more than the Thunder hit. The big thing is like Luka hasn't been able to. Sorry. Go ahead. I didn't realize you were continuing.
The 3-point shooting was a big thing. I think one of the reasons that Dallas was able to get going as well as they did is because of some defensive stuff from certain players on OKC, where I understand OKC's defensive philosophy is kind of, we're going to force Josh Green to hit his corner threes. We're going to force Derrick Jones Jr. to hit his catch and shoot threes. We're going to force PJ Washington to hit his catch and shoot threes. Obviously, PJ Washington out of those 3 guys is kind of like the best shooter, quote unquote, but he's still generally been like a little bit shaky throughout the past year. So we'll see if OKC kind of stands by that philosophy. I've said this before, but teams have their philosophies on defense, and they believe that over the course of a series, their philosophy is going to win them enough games to move on. And I think OKC's issues were more offensive than they were defensive. Josh Giddey being a minus 20 in 10 minutes of playing time. Minus 20 in 10 minutes. That's horrible. That's horrible. It's funny because I was scrolling through Reddit earlier and I saw a comment thread where they were like, he had 8 points in 11 minutes and was a -20. How 8 points in 11 minutes to me sounds pretty good. Like that's good production in 11 minutes. And I'm like, the fact that he scored 8 points in 11 minutes and was still a -20 should tell you everything you need to know. It should tell you that he probably played awful defense, which he did. And it should also tell you that even though he scored 8 points, he probably wasn't very efficient because Dallas was leaving him wide open and daring him to shoot. Whether it was catch and shoot threes or floaters, they were like, yeah, we'll happily let the offense run through Josh Giddey. Duh.
Right. I don't think Giddey should be shooting enough to have 8 points in 11 minutes. Like, it shouldn't even be that high volume of a score.
And he just doesn't do anything else. Like, Dallas literally just got to sit there and pack the paint. And, like, if you're packing the paint against the Thunder, they can't do their drive and kick thing.
Right.
They took Josh Giddey out and put Jalen Williams in, the other Jalen Williams. They put him in and immediately went on a big run because Jalen Williams can shoot. He was fantastic.
Yeah, I wasn't sure.
It's frustrating.
I wasn't sure if Jalen was going to be an actual shooter or just like a shooter in theory, but it seems like it's been better. Aaron Wiggins had that really good game one. I mean, I said going into the playoffs that the X factor was them. For them would be either Aaron or Cason Wallace and their ability to be that fifth starter, because it's very clear that Giddey could not be a high minutes player in the postseason. It's a huge liability on offense, and it's not like he's bringing anything else to the table other than scoring the ball. I don't even feel like his playmaking is like as impactful as it was as we were led to believe it would be. Like, he averaged 7 assists his rookie year, but I feel like that's very empty, and I feel like he's very rarely actually creating real opportunities that often. It's usually just him trying to fill the gaps with being a non-shooter, trying to score in some way, and usually it's a worse possession than if Jalen Williams or SGA had the ball in their hand. So it's just better to have someone out there who can hit a three-pointer and can play defense. I personally think it should be Aaron Wiggins, just so you have a little bit more length. Cason Wallace is great, but he does have the limitation of being 6'1". But either way, can't be Giddey, and I think they got to stop trying. It's been a couple of different games where he played 15 minutes because it was very clear it wasn't going to work. I don't think there's been any. I think he had one good playoff game out of the bunch he's played thus far. Otherwise, I see no reason to keep him in the rotation in any capacity.
Would you rather have Josh Giddey or Gordon Hayward in the rotation?
Neither one should be in the rotation.
Pick your poison. You gotta have one.
Gordon Hayward
is he can do other stuff.
He could probably hit a catch and shoot three in theory. He's bigger, smarter.
0 points, -3, 4 minutes.
Smarter positional defender in terms of just knowing where to be. That's one thing with Josh Giddey is he just gets lost, and you can't get lost in the playoffs. You're winning. Your games are decided so much on the margins, and when you have a player out there that gets abused on the margins, it's you're gonna lose. That's why he was a -20 in 10 minutes. I can't, dude.
Kind of taking it back to the Dallas side of things, it's very impressive to me that they can even squeeze out this win with Kyrie Irving only hitting 2 shots and on top of that 5 free throws for all of his points. PJ Washington obviously the overperformer to compensate for that, but just the fact that Kyrie is supposed to be maybe the best number 2 in the league and he's out here making 2 shots in 41 minutes.
Well, something that I feel the need to mention is this was an efficient Luka game, which has not happened all but once in this entire postseason. Shot 5 for 8 from 3. The problem for him has been he's not been getting to the basket because of his speed, and he's not been getting separation on his step back because of his lack of speed. People think of Luka as not a fast player, and he's not, but he's not genuinely very slow. He slows down strategically, and that works to his advantage, but actually just straight up being very slow is a problem for him. So he's not really getting his threes off like he likes, but he got him off in that game plenty fine. And I feel like he's gotten better at getting to the basket as he's ideally, at least in theory, getting a little healthier. But for a while, he just had to bank on the mid-range. I know that one good game that he had in the Clippers series. I say one good game. Even shooting 42% from the field, if you have 30 and 9 and 9, hats off. But either way, I think the only game he got off for real was he went off from mid-range. He like could not stop hitting mid-range shots. So his 3-ball going in this one on top of the 3-ball going for the rest of his teammates, it just became overwhelming. There's just too much shooting out there. Also, I felt damn good as a PJ Washington truther because I've been saying forever this guy can be a key contributor to a good team. Not expecting him to hit 7 threes with regularity, but I also don't think he's someone that you can leave open as much as you can, Derek Jones Jr. or Maxi Kleber, although Maxi Kleber was shooting like 60% from 3 in the playoffs before he got hurt. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is going to be a close matchup the whole way through, and really it'll be determined by Luka's health, because if Luka was healthy the whole series, or at least played like it most of the way, then I think Dallas wins. If he's just a little bit hobbled, I don't really think that they have enough shooting wise, and I don't think Kyrie can step up enough to make up for, Luka consistently shooting 40-something% from the field.
One thing I want to say is, this is kind of the last thing I have to say on this game. So Josh Giddey needs to be out of the rotation. We all understand that. Hopefully Mark Daignault understands that. OKC didn't shoot well. They shot 33% from 3. And a lot of their offense was just bogged down. That being said, just macro level, Dallas shot 48.6% from 3 on 37 attempts, and they won by 9. Mm-hmm. All of that stuff was working against OKC, and Dallas won by 9. And I'm not saying that Dallas, this is not me saying like, oh, they're cooked, like they have to do this every single night to win like by such a small margin. It's like, my point is more so OKC has to figure out how to go back to their game and not enable Dallas to have nights like this and slow them down quicker. I think OKC had the chance to win this game multiple times. There were multiple key moments where you're like, oh, okay, OKC's going on that run where they're going to take the game into their hands and put it away. But then they let Dallas right back in. And so OKC's got to figure out how to eliminate those moments where Dallas is able to get their foot back in the door.
Alex, I did have one last question before we move on to a different series. If you had to judge the panic meter for OKC, say like on DEFCON scale 1 through 5, where are you at right now? 5 being the biggest threat, the most panic.
My answer would be, if Josh Giddey continues to play throughout this series, I would say my DEFCON level's at 5. If Josh Giddey is not playing, I'm sorry, I think Josh Giddey is that bad that if he plays in this series, OKC's going to lose. Like, they're going to lose this series if Josh Giddey plays. But if Josh Giddey doesn't play, then I think my DEFCON level's at normal 2 or 3, like normal playoff level of concern.
Yeah, gotcha. I think Dallas can win this series, but I also don't think that OKC should be shaking in their boots. It's very winnable on both sides, I'd say.
I already thought this series was kind of going to be a long potential toss-up series.
Yeah.
So, but if Giddey's playing, it goes from being a toss-up to no, it's over.
Because they lost the game in those 10 minutes.
Yeah.
They would have won if he just never fucking played, probably.
Even if he didn't come back after the first quarter, they still probably win that game.
Mm-hmm.
Well, moving on to the other split series of the playoffs so far. Surprisingly, it's the Boston Celtics and the Cleveland Cavaliers. Cleveland sneaking one in last night. Shout out to the 333 people in the chat right now. Be sure to leave a like on the stream to help it perform a little bit better in the YouTube algorithm. And go check us out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all that stuff too. But who wants to go first talking about Cleveland and Boston. Jacob, I know we just spent all morning making half of a video about it. Do you want to start off your rambles?
Kind of another shooting variance game. Cleveland shot the hell out of the ball. I do think something that I pointed out in that commentary that will come out after this. So watch that video when it releases, everybody who's watching this live. But the 3-ball for Cleveland, I think they were generating cleaner looks because they were applying pressure to the rim regularly, especially Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. Evan Mobley more so in the first half. But they were getting good looks out of that, where Boston, it really felt like they were forcing the threes up. They matched them in terms of volume and three-point shooting in the second half. They both took 18, but I believe, what was the splits? I think Cleveland made 8 more than Boston did. I think they made 10 and Boston made 2 or 3, which is not good. But, that tells you like, oh, one of these teams was hot, one of them wasn't. There were definitely shots that Boston got that were good looks that just didn't go in. But I also felt like Boston's lack of rim pressure, which is already something that they're regularly criticized for, and rightfully so. I think it gets worse when they don't have Kristaps Porzingis as the roll option or the post-up option. So we're just going to put up a bunch of threes and mid-range jump shots. And if your shot's off and all you're getting are jump shots, you're going to lose that game. It's just as simple as that. I'm not too concerned about Boston's, chances going forward in the series. Obviously, losing one at home is not good, but it is like, even without Porzingis, I think the Celtics are a clearly better team. But yeah, I think they just need to apply more rim pressure. Jason Tatum was getting to the line initially in the game because he was doing that. And then with everybody else, this is the thing with Boston every fucking time. They devolve their offense, everything they do, it devolves at the worst possible time. Like they hit the panic button so hard all the time. And I think Porzingis adds more of a dynamic to their offense that they can, get away with it a little bit better. But without him, it's just right back to the exact old ways of both of the Jays just taking not great shots and that being all the offense they get.
I think it's less of like a reverse evolution and more of like a machine that's missing a cog. You know what I mean? When you take out the fundamental role of like your starting center who can stretch the floor, play good defense, this, that, and the third, it's easy to imagine a world where your star players start trying to do too much to compensate.
Yeah.
What were you saying, Alex? I mean, just talk at the same time as you.
Oh, you're fine. I think Cleveland has done a good job of just mucking things up for Boston and making them uncomfortable because I'm not saying Boston is predictable, but they have their actions that they like to run. They have their offense, and there is only a certain degree of you can prep for it, but you can still try to make them as uncomfortable as possible. Try to prevent them from getting into their action quickly. That's something I talk about in a video I'm doing on the Nuggets and Timberwolves series. Is something the Timberwolves are doing a very, very good job of. Is they're applying pressure on Denver to the point where there's 15 seconds on the shot clock and the ball has just now crossed half court and they haven't gotten into any action yet. Nothing's happened. They just now have the ball up there. And by the time they actually have somebody come off of a pin down or have somebody come set a screen for Jamal or anything like that, there's 9 seconds left. It's really hard. That's why the shot clock exists. That's why you have as much time as you have. So you can get into your actions and make things happen and generate offense. But when you only have 9 seconds to do that, or 15 seconds instead of 20 seconds or 22 seconds to do that, it's you're going to have a really hard time consistently generating good offense. And that's something I think Cleveland has done a decent job of, is just you're going to be able to get what you want to a certain extent, but we're going to make sure that it takes as long as possible before that actually happens. Credit to Cleveland. I think they've played a great series so far.
And just doing some box score journalism, you look at for outliers and these sorts of things, right? And Evan Mobley, probably the strongest, most abnormal performance of Cleveland, whereas on Boston, it was kind of just a lot of inefficiency. They're kind of just you can see Jaylen Brown 41%, Jason Tatum 41%, even Al Horford shooting sub 50%.
Tatum at least got to the line,
right?
unlike Jaylen.
But Donovan Mitchell was 10 of 19. I'm just saying, like, it's not like Cleveland absolutely caught fire. It's more like you were saying, Alex. Seemingly they seem to muck it up. I mean,
Darius
Evan Mobley was
and
hot.
Donovan Mitchell combined hit 6 pull-up threes in the third quarter. That's fucking rough, man.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something you normally get in that stretch of time.
Darius Garland 4 of 5 from 3 in this game. Donovan Mitchell 5 of 7 from 3. Evan Mobley even hit 1 for 2. Okoro hit 1 too. So I guess it's strictly in the 3-point shooting range where it's very positively skewed.
But like I said, people sometimes just evolve it to attempts, and just like they got the same amount of attempts, but one of them was hot, one wasn't. But in reality, I think Cleveland generated better looks. Also, I feel like Boston should try to. I feel like they've not done enough of an effort to keep Evan Mobley away from the action because he fucking eats up space. And anytime he's involved, it makes it a lot harder to get anything open. So you end up having to settle for a bad jump shot.
That's something that I think Boston does a really bad job of, like, even in the regular season, like something that it's funny. I keep bringing up the Timberwolves because I've had complaints about the Timberwolves offense the entire season, but the postseason has been an entirely different story. But one thing that they're doing in their series against the Nuggets is to get Aaron Gordon out of help. They're using other guys as decoys, and they're using like weak side action as a decoy to get Aaron Gordon lifted away from the low man spot. And okay, well, let's think about who are the other potential low man candidates that are going to be out on the floor for Denver at any given time. Well, Jokic, no, they're probably going to have him playing at the level of the screen because that's typically how Denver operates. Jokic usually defends at the level. So who does that leave? That leaves Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Well, if with all the size that Minnesota has, you probably don't want KCP being your low man. You might have Michael Porter Jr. Michael Porter Jr. has length, but he's not the best defender in the world. He can have a little bit of an impact, but there's only so much Michael Porter Jr. is going to be able to do as your weak side help. Mm-hmm. And then Jamal Murray. It's like, do you really want Jamal Murray to be your low man? And I think Boston probably needs to make more of an emphasis to make it to where whoever Evan Mobley's guarding at any given time, you need to be running half court action to get him lifted. Make it run, put a lineup out there to where Evan Mobley can't just afford to roam down low. Mm-hmm. Make sure that he is pulled up somewhere, having to defend at the level or having to potentially defend a guy curling off of a pin down, stuff like that. You need to make him move instead of just letting him play the game that the Cavs want him to play. And props to him and props to the Cavs. They've played a great defensive scheme. It's worked really well.
Shout out to Coach John Blair Bickerstaff. I know you guys hate it when I say his whole name for some reason, but it takes no additional time because John Blair is the same amount of syllables as JB. Fun fact. You want to move into the Timberwolves Nuggets game since they're at the top of your brain, Alex, or we want to go right into this rigged series with the Knicks versus Pacers?
Let's talk Timberwolves Nuggets. We kind of flirted with it, so let's just jump in.
Go off.
I called that shit the best defensive performance I've ever seen. Do you think it ranks up there pretty highly for you? It's got to be at least pretty high.
I said this on the lost episode of the Media Pass that it didn't actually get posted because my audio was messed up. But my dad was texting me during that game. My dad and I always text during Timberwolves games because he's a Timberwolves fan. I'm I guess, second tier Timberwolves fan, OKC first and the Timberwolves. But my dad was texting me throughout that entire first half. And I'm like Minnesota sports brained where I have PTSD. And anytime they go up big or do anything good, I'm like, well, this is not going to last long.
When they got it to 17, I was like, surely not. Surely this isn't happening.
And my dad was texting me, and at the end of the second half, he texted me. He was like, that's the best defensive half of basketball I've ever seen in my life. And my dad's been watching basketball for 70 years.
70.
Called him.
Jesus
I'm
Christ.
joking. He's not that old.
It's like, how old is your father?
We've met his dad.
Yeah, it's like he looks great for
He's not even close to 70.
Right. That's why I was like, what the fuck are you talking about?
But yeah, I agree. I think it was the best.
It's funny.
The
My
first
dad-
half more so than the second half. I had some gripes with the third quarter, but we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, my dad said something similar, that it was one of the best he'd seen, and one of the best he'd seen in a very long time.
Alex, I
Yeah,
think
no
you owe
doubt.
someone an apology before you get into your spiel, Jacob. I think you owe Kyle Anderson an apology. He's the Jokic stopper. Slow-mo on Jokic is the move, and
I think
know.
Nas Reed on Jokic is the move.
Yeah.
But I will credit Kyle Anderson. I thought he played a great defensive game, and offensively, aside from the first quarter, I was watching.
Yeah, he
Kyle
kept putting up
Anderson, and I was
shots. And it's like, who do you think you are, bro? You're not Kobe. Pass it.
I'm like, dog, I understand they're leaving you open in the mid-range. They're doing that for a reason. Just because you're open doesn't mean you have to take it. Like, run a DHO or something. Like, you have an empty corner because they're leaving you open. Like, they know you're not going to drive off the dribble. They know you're not. Just run a dribble handoff, man. It's okay. And when it's funny because I say that, and in this video I'm working on about the Nuggets and the Timberwolves, I literally have a possession where Kyle Anderson runs a dribble handoff in an empty corner, and it leads directly to an Anthony Edwards easy layup. So point being, Kyle Anderson, please do more of the things that you do good and less of the things that they're like gladly giving you. If they're giving it to you, it means you probably shouldn't be doing it.
He did hit like one or two of them, to be fair.
Yeah, he did. You're right, but that doesn't mean it's like the whole thing with like the Suns. Like, teams say Kevin Durant mid-range shots aren't going to beat us over a 7-game series. It's like Kyle Anderson wide open mid-range shots and threes aren't going to beat you over a 7-game series.
Definitely not.
But shout out to Kyle Anderson. He played well. He played very well.
Yeah, I think given the context of like the team they're playing, how much we've been talking this year about how unstoppable modern offenses are, given how unstoppable Denver's offense and obviously Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray looked last year, like this is the most impressive modern defensive performance I've seen at the bare minimum. Like in the last 10 years, I can't think of a game where I was more impressed by a team's defense.
They're doing something that I think will become the meta for defending the Nuggets. And it's like, we talked a lot during the Lakers series last year where they put Rui on Jokic and it allowed Anthony Davis to send help from the paint instead of them having to send that post double from the top. And that would just leave like a shooter one pass away. So if you watch like what the Nuggets and Timberwolves games have looked like so far, what the Timberwolves are doing is they still have that double, like say Jokic is posting up and he's got Cat on him. The Timberwolves will still send that double team from the top. So like above the break, they'll still send that double team from there. But what they do is they have whoever's on the weak side above the break wing shooter, they'll have them pre-rotate onto that top shooter that's one pass away from Jokic. And that eliminates that easy catch and shoot opportunity or closeout attacking opportunity that Denver usually has. And it forces them to have to make skip passes. And it's like, well, yeah, you don't want to give up a skip pass, but if you're going to choose between having a shooter one pass away or forcing the team to make a skip pass, you'll definitely take the skip pass. And it's way more beneficial for the Timberwolves because they have the defensive personnel on the weak side usually to handle those rotations, like Jaden McDaniels, like Nickeil Alexander-Walker. They'll close out on those guys and you'll be fine.
Yeah, they can throw doubles at you and then cover the opening that the double created by the time the pass is there. And it's like, at that point, what do you do?
It's funny because if you look at the shot profiles from game 1 and game 2, in game 1, because they had Gobert, the Timberwolves were not giving up a ton of stuff at the rim. Like they had the rim deterrence of Gobert. So the Nuggets were doing a lot more mid-range stuff. They had that traditional defensive philosophy of like, okay, you're running these spread pick and rolls. We're going to have Jaden McDaniels chase you off the screen, funnel you into Gobert's defense in the paint, force you into tough mid-range shots. But if you look at the shot profile from game 2, Denver was taking more corner threes and more shots at the rim. And that's because Minnesota was defending a lot more in like a almost more traditional way of just like, yeah, we're going to get put in rotation or we're going to end up with you at the rim. We're just going to trust our personnel to be able to defend you at the rim. And Minnesota's able to afford sending so much defensive attention on whoever has the ball at any given time because they have that personnel that can make those recoveries when they help, or even like there's a lot of times I'll see the Timberwolves overhelp, like textbook overhelping, but for the Timberwolves, it's not overhelping because they're just that good.
It's a remarkable luxury. And I can't, there are probably few rosters that are this stacked with defensive talent because obviously not all of them are going to get it, but there's legitimately 4 guys who are all defensive tier defenders on this team. And that's ludicrous. They're all versatile as well. Like even Ant is got to be one of the strongest like 6'5" guys in the entire league. Like he plays so much bigger than he is. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I don't get an impression that he's easy to move either, even though he doesn't look that built necessarily, but they play bigger than they are, and his arms are long as hell. Jaden McDaniels is 6'10", but he can move with the speed of a guard. And Rudy Gobert is better at switching and like handling shit on the perimeter than people give him credit for. So it's like they can cover so much space, and any opening they give you isn't going to be open by the time you can take advantage of it. All right.
Rudy looked like he was pulling something up, so I was like, I guess I'll just wait for this.
Alex knows the cues. I did want to bring up this Nuggets beat writer's general impression from practice a couple days ago, saying that the Nuggets will do what they can to start well in Game 3, something they've notably not done in Games 1 and 2, saying if they're unable to do so, I have some idea what their reaction will be, and it's not good. The second means that there's some give-up factor in the Nuggets that opened up after Game 2. It's something that hasn't been there before. I don't expect the team to be mounting 15-plus point comebacks, so they've got to stay attached. What do we think about the potential of the Nuggets having a give-up factor?
Well, the thing is, in that game, that was like the first time I really felt like I saw them like wave a white flag. Like they got it to the 17 points. Like it looked for a minute like they might do the thing they do. Because I had said for the Lakers series that Denver has a huge tendency to play down to their competition at first, kind of dig themselves into a hole, but they're clutch as hell and they're good as fuck in the fourth quarter, so they figure it out. So before this Game 2, I looked it up. Their average deficit at half was 11, or not their average deficit, not their average deficit, sorry. Their average difference in points, so their first half to the second, they'd score 11 and a half less points in the first half. That's without factoring in Game 2. I haven't done that math, but I'm pretty sure it's significantly less in the first half than they had in the second half, because they kind of found their stride a little bit on offense at points during the third quarter and very early in the fourth. But they looked like they waved the white flag, and I've never seen that from this team, even when they weren't like in the championship echelon yet. Like, this is a team that made 2 3-1 comebacks in the same playoff run. This is not a team that gives up, but I really felt like that at this point. Game 3, I'm scared for what might happen, because if they just go out like that again, shit's gonna get ugly, like that reporter said, for sure.
I think so I don't know. I don't even know if I want to bring this up because it's like a speculative thing that I've seen. But like, I don't think Jokic has looked like himself. And I've seen some like theories as to why that is. Some people are saying it has to do with the fact that he like didn't play in the World Cup or whatever it was for Serbia, and like he's like worried about the backlash if he doesn't play now, and so like he seems checked out of the playoffs, which I'm like, that seems wild to just be like, I'm going to phone it in for the playoffs so that I can play for my country. But I mean,
that seems
I don't
crazy
know.
to me.
Yeah.
That's yeah, I don't know about that one, dog.
Yeah, it seems pretty out there.
But if it were to be anyone to do that, it would be Jokic. I don't think that's the case, but I see why the rumors would be in place. He's the face of work-life balance, man. He's the king of setting boundaries at work.
Face of not, he sets boundaries with the media. He likes and cares about the game of basketball. He wouldn't bitch to the refs the way that he does if he didn't. If he was truly detached, the amount of emotion I've seen on his face when shit happens on the basketball court, he clearly cares about basketball. That narrative always fucking annoys me. Stupid. It's dumb.
Real quick, I do want to say one thing to kind of make the case for the Nuggets here. The Nuggets are shooting like uncharacteristically bad off the catch, on wide open threes, up and down the board. Their shooting has been unusually bad, and you can say, like, yes, you could say the Timberwolves defense has something to do with that.
They're in their head,
but well, I mean, maybe that's
to a
something
degree
that we don't know that, because like wide open threes are something that is very, very much not like influenced by like a tangible factor. It's very much a luck based thing, and the Nuggets are shooting abysmally on wide open threes, like 29%. Which, you know, if the Nuggets start hitting their threes, then this series becomes a lot more interesting. The Nuggets haven't really shot too well from three throughout the entire playoffs so far.
I feel like KCP's got a little bit of a pass because his offense has been very bad. And obviously, you know, that guy's the fifth option in that starting lineup, but you still want him to hit his open shots, and he hasn't been. He's at like 31% from three last I looked at it.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, it's just unusually bad. So if that levels out, I think this series might get interesting, but who knows?
Yeah, Jamal Murray, quote unquote, waved the white flag by chucking stuff onto the court, according to Orlando Till in the chat.
I think we had a text exchange about after game 2 where I said they should run more pick and roll, just because like the Jokic post ups were more stagnant. And this is after game 1, obviously. I think I already said that, but I felt like they got better possessions when they had Jamal Murray, Jokic pick and roll 2-man game. But then game 2, I actually feel like they did run it more. I don't have any tracking stats on that, but it looks to me like they were going to that action more and less to the Jokic post-ups, even without Rudy Gobert there. But it seemed like they got locked up even fucking more. So what do I know suggesting such a thing?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think the big issue is that the Timberwolves really are comfortable, like, yeah, we're going to make Jamal Murray have to make the decisions, like not just choosing when to shoot, but like making him facilitate the offense. And they're like pretty aggressively pressuring Jokic and shutting off passing lanes to him, especially in like the pick and roll. And so like a lot of times you'll see Jamal Murray driving off of the screen, and like Kyle Anderson would dig off of the corner on the weak side and like disrupt the ball, and Jamal Murray turns it over, because Jamal Murray, I think, is a good passer, but like he's not super diverse in like the passes that he's able to make and the points at which during a drive he can get the ball. Like live dribble passing is not a strong suit of Jamal Murray's.
Not to mention his explosion is very limited, because I believe he's howled right now. What's the leg injury that he has? Do either of you know with some level of certainty?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but he definitely has a leg injury. Right? Yeah, calf sounds right. He's got a baby cow injury. Pedro in the chat says, "Rusty, I like your shirt."
Thank you.
But any final thoughts on this Denver versus Minnesota series? Is it the best series of the playoffs that we're going to get? Real hoop heads were really anticipating this one going in, but now with Denver going down 0-2, entering Minnesota, who knows? Might be a freaking sweep for all we know.
This feels weird to me because Denver was like the team that I kind of was obsessed with in last year's playoff run. And then now I'm kind of feeling that way for the Timberwolves. So I'm watching like the new apprentice kill the former one. Yeah, Minnesota's awesome. I never thought I could love a Timberwolves team like this for real, but this team is so sick. It's so fun.
Oh, let me blast the Nas Reed towels. Hopefully that was a little bit less laggy for the viewers at home than it was for me watching it here on the stream. Let's get into this rigged series where New York is fixed to win against the Pacers, where Rick Carlisle filed for 49 calls in Game 2 to be reviewed, along with 29 from Game 1 for a total of 78. 49 calls is more challenges than there are minutes in a basketball game. So he's saying the refs got something wrong every single minute on the floor on average, and then some. Fellas, is this actually rigged, or is this just Madison Square Garden giving them home court advantage?
I think Game 1, I understand like the whole free throw thing, but Game 2, I'm like, if Rick Carlisle said that after Game 1, I'd be like, yeah, man, you tell him. But now I'm kind of like, I don't know, Game 2, the Knicks had everyone on crutches and you still lost. Like, come on, man.
I think people like to blame free throw shooting any chance they can possibly get because it abstains all other criticism. You know, it's like we got screwed. It can't possibly be that our team was just worse.
Yeah, and let's not act like Rick Carlisle like coached a flawless game and like the refs just prevented him from, you know, being able to influence his team's ability to win. It's like, no, you made some questionable decisions, dog. Like, don't just blame the refs. But here's the thing that I will say. If your team thinks that the officiating was a big problem and they're like fired up about it and it's like causing a ton of problems for your team, then I don't blame a coach who goes out to the press conference and says the officiating sucked. Like, that's a coach's job, is to be like the mouthpiece for the team and like take the fine, like say that kind of stuff to try and have an influence for next game. So like, even though I think Rick Carlisle probably should have said this stuff after Game 1, I'm still not like, oh, what an idiot for saying this. He's so wrong. It's like, no, this is his job. He's doing what he's supposed to do.
Yeah, there's always going to be bad fouls is the thing that gets to me. Like, if it's skewed one way a lot, yeah, call it out. But I feel like some people are just always a little over dramatic about it. I understand it. You know, it's emotional. You're invested in it, but you know, the Knicks are also just a way better team. So that's probably the biggest problem for Indiana in this one, not the officiating.
Do we think that the Pacers have any sort of chance, or are they just completely helpless and at the mercy of this very depleted Knicks team? Because mind you, they don't have Julius Randle, they don't have Bogey, they don't have Robinson. Brunson got hurt during the game. OG had 22 points in the first half, I think, before getting injured. Like this very depleted Knicks team, no matter how much bad luck they seem to have, still seem to own these Pacers. So does Indiana even stand a chance?
I mean, neither win was like that convincing, and Tyrese Halliburton responded to his 6-point performance in Game 1 with a much, much, much more aggressive performance in Game 2, which you wanted to see. I think that going into Indiana, they can probably at least win one of those games. I think it's possible that they could win both of them. I don't think Indiana's like just a complete wash. I'm also unsurprised to see that their defense has been better in the postseason than their reputation, you know, suggested, just because as the season went along, Indiana's defense slowly got better. Their offense got worse because Tyrese Halliburton got worse, but you know, they're seeming to replicate that system while still managing to be a good offense. And Tyrese, you know, displayed that he can have that big game, because I think in the series before, he really was not putting up numbers much at all either, because he's been dealing with an injury, and like ever since that, at some like towards the All-Star break portion of the season, his numbers have been down. But him being good and them going back to Indiana, they can definitely tie it. I would probably bet on it being 3-1 going back to New York in Game 5, though. That's what I would assume.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. It's also not like the Pacers have, like you said, it's the games have been close. It's not like these have been blowouts. And the Pacers have shot. I think the Pacers shot 39% in game 1 and 44% from 3 in game 2. So it's not like they're shooting bad. This isn't like some crazy variance thing. I think the Knicks have definitely shot a little bit above their caliber, but it's also like, that's just how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you lose a series because the other team went out of their mind from 3. And if that's the case, then you just kind of say, well, we freaking tried. Like, we did our best. It's happened to a lot of teams in the past, recent history.
The Pacers do stand a chance at getting past the Knicks in this series.
I still think I'd probably have the Knicks winning the series just because, like, 2-0 is historically, like, in favor of the team that wins and goes up 2-0. But I mean, anything's possible, especially with a team that's so heavily reliant on 3-point shooting. It's like literally anything can happen. We know anything can happen because it's happened before. Until a team wins 4 games, I'm convinced anything can happen.
Is there any sort of like scheme, rotation, or matchup that you might think could be key to giving the Pacers a better chance? Because right now you got like Nimhard matching up on Brunson, Miles Turner for the whole season of these Pacers have kind of been underutilized as a defender. Is there something that the Pacers specifically could do to give them a good chance, in your opinion, or is that a little bit too inside baseball to say on a live show?
I mean, I would have to probably like sit down and watch a lot of film on it to be able to have a good answer to that question. I haven't I've more so just been watching these games lately. I haven't been like scouting them.
Yeah,
nothing wrong with enjoying basketball.
The Knicks Pacers is definitely a series that I've watched more casually,
which we love to do on this podcast. This is a pro casual podcast, as you know, the only podcast hosted by the only professional casual fan in NBA YouTube history. I think I'm the only one who
there's
that
plenty
title.
of those.
You're telling me all these guys on this website don't call themselves analysts?
No.
Well, I guess now we're just moving into the Q&A portion of the pod. If we don't have any more thoughts on the playoffs so far, Lars, way earlier in the pod, asked us, should Embiid ask for a trade? Should he ask for a trade? I don't see why he would. The Sixers have a ton of flexibility entering this offseason. Sure, they haven't exactly run the best show around him so far, but they still have potential to be good. So I'd stick around if I was him. It's been his whole pro life.
This would just be a weird time. If he was going to abandon ship, it should have been earlier than this or after this upcoming offseason. Now would just be very weird.
I think it's more likely they make a big trade than it is Embiid asks for one.
Big trade or big free agency signing?
Well, yeah. That. One or the other.
I'm starting to believe the Paul George thing is going to happen.
Or Jimmy Butler?
Jimmy Butler would be fantastic.
That would be very funny.
It also seems like the Heat, Pat Riley, kind of over Jimmy Butler. He said that he needs to stop talking because we're out of the playoffs or something. I get it, Heat culture, yada yada. It's probably something that looks worse on paper than it sounded in person. But
it sounded pretty bad in person.
Yeah.
If you watch the video, it sounds pretty bad.
I threw together a fake trade for our group chat to get Jimmy Butler to Memphis. I'd be willing to do it, but it would require Luke Kennard opting in, which is not going to happen.
Whole defensive scheme is going to be to sag. Good Lord.
Oh no. 2 guys who can't shoot. That means we have no chance. Yeah, no, it would be nice if we had a shooter.
That is what that means, actually.
Going from Luke Kennard to Jimmy Butler would probably be a step in the wrong direction for Memphis. I agree, actually. I think you're right. Brian Catano said, why are the Bulls so shit? Damn, no wonder Rusty keeps riding the Lakers. They got no future.
What do you mean I keep riding the Lakers?
That's so funny.
I've never seen you ride the Lakers this whole season.
I picked them to lose in 5 to Denver, and a bunch of people said that I was riding Denver. Which am I riding? What the fuck? Why do I have to be writing anything? Why can't I just talk about some basketball teams?
Yeah, have an opinion. You're riding something.
Sometimes you just go to the rodeo. It doesn't always make you a cowboy. KM said, which team is more likely to win a chip? A team with a star and a good supporting cast, but no bench depth, or a solid starting 5 with pretty good depth. Basically, would you take 11 mid-level exceptions or one max guy with some superstars in the lineup with no good bench? I'm taking the higher top end talent than the 11 mid-level exceptions.
Quite easily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've entertained this theory plenty of times in the past. Shout out to a guy named Bobby I had in the Hustle Points podcast a long time ago. But I like the idea. It would just have to be a perfectly constructed team.
Do you want the Pelicans without Zion or the Denver Nuggets?
Yeah, this Denver Nuggets down 0-2. I don't know.
I still would rather have the Denver Nuggets, though.
All right. And that looks like we don't really have any more cues in the chat for us to if you're writing with us right now in the live stream, be sure to check out the Also Rusty Buckets video coming out basically right now on this channel. And without any further ado, catch you guys next week. Any final words, Alex? You wanna send the audience off?
What? I didn't prepare for this.
Yeah, that's what I thought.